My House of Horrors Chapter 421 to 430. Zhang Li moved slowly. He did not dare turn his back on Chen Ge. When he saw Chen Ge walk into the room, he added in his dark voice, "Don't close the door. I need some fresh air."
Bang! Chen Ge locked the door from the inside and entered the room with the hammer. He looked around. The room was simple. There were several normal pieces of furniture, and there was a pungent smell of cheap cigarettes. There was a metal plate on the coffee table. It was filled with cigarette butts, and there were many cigarette ashes and small holes next to the sofa.
"You like to smoke?" Chen Ge felt like he had returned to his own home. He moved a chair and sat near the door. "Is that the first question?" Zhang Li stood next to the coffee table with a long face. He felt like he was being restrained. "Just answer my questions. I'm doing this for your own good." Chen Ge looked at the cigarette butts on the plate. There were many kinds, but they were all cheap. "For my own good." Zhang Li took several steps back and leaned against the window. "What do you want?" Chen Ge placed the security pass on the coffee table and put the hammer away. "Who was the woman who went to the haunted house with you this morning?" "My little sister. She just quit her job, and she was not in a good mood. That was why I asked for leave to accompany her to the theme park." "When you two entered the haunted house, why did you purposely avoid the students from Western Zhejiang Medical University? Were you afraid of being recognized?" Chen Ge weaved a large net around Zhang Li. He waited for Zhang Li to enter before slowly tightening it. "The students don't like me. If they recognize me, it will be very troublesome." Zhang Li took a deep breath. "Plus, my sister and I have gotten used to it." "Used to what?" Chen Ge realized that there was more to Zhang Li's words than met the eye. "My sister used to study at Western Zhejiang Medical University. Due to a certain incident, she got into a conflict with another girl at the school, and coincidentally, the girl disappeared the next day." Zhang Li's fingers tightened. "Ever since then, people at the school started to spread rumors that the girl's disappearance was related to my sister."
It was indeed a coincidence. Otherwise, Li Zheng wouldn't have listed Zhang Shihan and Zhang Li as suspects. Chen Ge nodded. "What did the students say?" "At first, those B***stards talked behind my sister's back. Then, they talked about it loudly in front of my sister. They said that the girl's depression worsened because of a fight with my sister. In the end, she committed suicide. Some even said that my sister was the murderer and that my sister hid the girl." Zhang Li took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and lit one.
The smoke rose, and Zhang Li felt better. "Many of the students who were good friends with my sister left her. At that time, my sister was on the verge of a mental breakdown. She even personally went to different parts of the school to look for the missing girls, but she never found them."
"No wonder you're so cold to the students from Western Zhejiang Medical University. I didn't expect something like this to happen." Chen Ge looked at Zhang Li, and after a long time, he said, "The police once contacted me. In the case of the missing girl, you and your sister are the main suspects. Their suspicion is not without reason. Considering the motive, time, and ability, you two are the biggest suspects." Quote.
"We didn't kill anyone. The girl's disappearance has nothing to do with us." Zhang Li was annoyed, but he did not dare show it. He could only bite on the cigarette in his mouth. "I know you didn't kill anyone. The real killer is not you. They've been using you to distract the police." Now that Chen Ge heard Zhang Li's story, he finally understood how meticulous the person who set up this trap was. He not only removed all the clues, he also used the students who did not know the truth to create two scapegoats to lead the police in the wrong direction. When Zhang Li heard Chen Ge say with certainty that they were not the real killer, this man with a terrible personality looked at Chen Ge with surprise. He suddenly felt like the man before him was not that bad after all. "You're on leave today, so you don't know. The missing girl's body has been found, and her killer has surrendered." Chen Ge did not hide anything. "Who is the killer?" Zhang Li put out the cigarette and walked to stand before Chen Ge. "It's the well-dressed worker at your school. I believe his name is Lu Jie." Lu Jie. Zhang Li was stunned like he could not accept this reality. Lu Jie is only one of the killers. The other one is still missing. We only know that the other killer is related to the underground morgue.
"You too." Zhang Li noticed that Chen Ge's choice of words was strange. Chen Ge's expression turned serious immediately. He pointed at the locked door. Don't tell anyone what I'm about to tell you.
Zhang Li nodded nervously. I'm the only tenant on this floor, so there's no need to worry. I won't tell a third person. Good. Chen Ge took out his phone to show Captain Yan, Western Zhujiang Station's Li Sanbao, and Li Zheng from Unit 1. Then he said slowly, actually, I'm an informant arranged by the police. I've cooperated with them on many cases. Zhang Li did not quite understand, but for some reason, he felt like Chen Ge was trustworthy.
You and your sister are not in a good situation. Chen Ge then dropped another important piece of information. There is still one killer who has not been caught, and the situation is still very dangerous. He is very familiar with Western Zhujiang Medical University, so he should be hiding among you. Temporarily, we can't confirm who it is. To not cause panic, I came to find you to understand some things. As long as I know, I'll tell you everything. Zhang Li's voice was not as suppressed as before. He sat down next to Chen Ge, and his attitude was completely different from before.
We need information about the underground morgue, the more detailed, the better. Chen Ge did not hold back.
When you came last time, didn't the school already provide you with a copy? Zhang Li was confused, but he chose to believe Chen Ge. The library has the old layout of the morgue. If you need it, I can help you take some pictures.
The layout is only one thing. Chen Ge was not satisfied. You've been a security guard at the school for so many years. Have you noticed anything weird that has escaped from the underground morgue? Or have you run into any strange incidents? Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chen Ge purposely came to ask Zhang Li about this because this security guard had been acting too strangely at the haunted house. He had to have had some special experience. Zhang Li's depression and darkness came from his bones. He probably had many secrets that he could not share with others. Being stared at by Chen Ge, Zhang Li was nervous. He opened his mouth several times, but no sound came out. Don't hold back. Tell me everything you've seen and heard. The more Zhang Li acted like this, the more curious Chen Ge became. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but I'm afraid you won't believe me even if I tell you. Zhang Li took out a cigarette from his pocket. Can I have a smoke? You can do whatever you want in your own home, don't mind me. After getting Chen Ge's permission, Zhang Li lit the cigarette and took a deep puff. He enjoyed the feeling of the tobacco stimulating his lungs. It was as if that was the only way he could temporarily forget about the things that were bothering him. After exhaling slowly, the first thing Zhang Li said attracted Chen Ge's attention. The cadavers in the underground morgue can move on their own. Cadavers can move. There are things that are scarier than that. Zhang Li's hands were shaking. When I first arrived at Western Zhujiang Medical University as a security guard, the underground morgue on the western campus was expanding. All the pools that used to store cadavers were stopped, and the plan was to replace them with new morgues. The underground morgue is underneath the western campus, so the construction is quite difficult. Initially, the school's plan was to renovate the few large morgues at the deepest part of the morgue, dig out the cadaver pools, and refurbish them. They hired a professional team to do it, and the renovation was expected to be completed in half a month. However, on the second day the team entered the morgue, an accident happened. When one of the workers was cleaning the formalin in the pool, he accidentally fell into the pool. The pool was not deep, but the worker could not climb out no matter how hard he tried. He felt like many people were grabbing onto him, refusing to let him leave. Zhang Li soon finished the cigarette. He gestured to Chen Ge with both of his hands. This kind of large mortuary pool is similar to the old public bathhouses. However, the liquid inside the mortuary pool is yellowish-brown and opaque. You can only see the limbs, back, and hair. What happened to the workers who fell into the pool? Chen Ge was more curious about this. Next to the morgue, there are iron hooks that are used to pull corpses out. Usually, when medical students do experiments, they use those things to pull corpses out of the morgue. At that time, the other workers on the scene threw the iron hook into the pool and let the person who fell in catch it. Several people worked together to pull him out. Zhang Li lit another cigarette. He was a heavy smoker, especially when he was reminded of the things that he had tried his best to avoid. When the worker fell into the pool, he accidentally took several sips of the formalin in the pool. Then he was sent to the hospital to have his stomach pumped. He was fine, but I heard that after his body recovered, something went wrong with his brain, and he kept mumbling to himself. Can you still get in touch with that worker? Did he say anything before he went berserk? I'm not sure. It's been a long time. If you really want to know, I can go to the school to ask around, but don't get your hopes up. It's fine. You can continue. Chen Ge took out his phone and was ready to record the important information.
After the worker was sent to the hospital, the construction continued as normal, but on the second night, another strange thing happened. Zhang Li's expression was heavy, like he still felt uncomfortable thinking about it. The number of dead bodies that were moved by the workers and the construction team changed.
Is this what you mean by the moving dead bodies? I suppose so, but the scarier thing is yet to come. Zhang Li was telling other people's stories, and he did not mention how he ended up like this. His voice lowered, and Zhang Li seemed to be cold. He took another deep puff. On the third day, the construction team entered the deeper part of the morgue. They dealt with the dead bodies in the first morgue and dug up the pool that was built 20 years ago. What they saw scared the hell out of all the workers. The bottom of the pool was like a human body. It was filled with blood vessels, and when they were exposed to the light, they quickly shriveled. Zhang Li frowned. He leaned against the sofa, and his face was pale. At the time, I was there to help, and I looked into the pool. How should I put this? It felt like the pool was alive.
Blood vessels grew at the bottom of the pool. Chen Ge memorized what Zhang Li had said. The leader of the construction team went to find the school's leader for this. The leader did not know the reason, but the conclusion they came up with was that it was a very rare fungus. Zhang Li shook his head gently. Even someone like me, who has never been to school, knows that they are bullshitting. The construction team also raised objections. In the end, I heard that the school doubled the original salary, and the construction team only agreed to continue working. That afternoon, the construction team removed the edge of the pool and started to dig deeper. They wanted to clear out a space, but the more they dug, the more they felt that something was wrong. The soil under the pool gave off the smell of formalin, and the soil was red. There were dark brown threads that would shatter at the slightest touch. No one knew what those things were. They did not look like the roots of plants or the carcasses of insects. The construction team reported the situation of the underground morgue to the school, and they took some soil samples out. After the school saw them, they could not explain it, and they only urged the construction team to move faster.
To reassure the construction team, the school's workers accompanied them, telling them not to worry and that this was normal.
Zhang Li seemed to be dissatisfied with the school's actions, and his tone changed slightly. At the time, I had just joined the school as a security guard. No one was willing to help in the underground morgue, so they pushed the responsibility onto me. I was just an errand boy for the school, and I was not familiar with the construction team. In the end, I was bullied by both sides.
The progress of the underground morgue was very slow, and strange things kept happening. The construction team kept getting injured, and in the end, they could not take it anymore, and all the workers went on strike. The school had no choice, and after discussing with the construction team, they changed the plan. They planned to expand the morgue, and the original morgue was abandoned. However, the school's compromise came with a condition. They gave the construction team a strict order, and they had to finish the renovation within 1 month. If the construction team still dragged their feet and did not finish the project within the stipulated time, they would be seen as breaching the contract.
The construction team did not want to stay in the deeper part of the morgue for a long time. They blocked the path that led deeper into the morgue and started to expand the morgue according to the blueprints. After exiting the underground morgue, there were no more accidents, and the construction team started to focus on their work.
Time was limited, and when the deadline was almost up, they would work until very late. The school knew that it was not easy for them, so they would send people to deliver them water and provide as much help as they could. At this point, Zhang Li gritted his teeth. The school gave this mission to the teachers and security team. Initially, everyone would go together, but later, probably because the teachers thought there was nothing wrong with the morgue, they would leave early. The rest of the security team did not pay attention to this, and in the end, they left everything to me. The underground morgue had already been expanded several times, and the paths inside were very complicated. As a new security guard, even with a map, it was easy for me to get lost alone. When there were still 3 days until the deadline, the construction team started to panic. They found a new batch of workers, and they split into 2 shifts to work day and night. They worked day and night, so I had to accompany them. It was fine in the day, but at night, whenever I entered the underground morgue, it felt weird. It was summer, and it was like a steamer outside, but when I entered the morgue, it was not hot at all. In fact, I would shiver for some reason. The new batch of workers didn't know what had happened at the deeper part of the underground morgue. They were dumb enough to think that the working environment was not bad. Some of them were tired at night, so they would lie down on the floor and sleep for a while. John Lee slammed the cigarette on the metal plate, and he reached the end of his story.
The underground morgue was different at night than in the morning, but I couldn't tell what was different. On the 3rd day before the deadline, strange things started to happen again.
I received a call at 1 a.m. The people from the underground morgue called to say that someone had gone missing. I quickly contacted the others and rushed to the underground morgue. When I was halfway there, the people at the underground morgue called to say that they had found the man. At the time, I was furious, but when I reported this to the teacher in charge, he scolded me, saying that I had called him without knowing what was going on. I couldn't argue with that. I returned to the bedroom alone, and not long after I lay down, there was another call from the underground morgue. The tone was urgent, saying that the other person had disappeared.
This time, I asked about the other party's situation. That person told me that the worker who first went missing heard someone calling him. When he looked up, he saw someone waving at him in the passageway. In the end, he followed. When he was halfway there, he realized that the path seemed to lead deeper into the underground morgue. He felt like something was wrong, so he ran back. Quote,
"The second missing worker got lost when he went out to look for the first person. He couldn't get through to his phone, and we don't know where he is now. When I heard that it was an emergency, I called another teacher as I rushed to the underground morgue. When the teacher found out, he told me to go and stabilize the situation, and he would be there soon. That night, I stayed with the workers in the underground morgue. It was not until dawn that I found the missing worker in the deepest part of the underground tunnel. He was lying next to the half-dug morgue, unconscious. No one knew the reason for this. A sense of anxiety spread through the team, and none of them wanted to stay there any longer. However, the deadline was almost up, and the expansion was almost complete. It would be a waste to give up now. In the end, the school showed up and had the security team accompany the construction team to the underground morgue at night. They had to ensure that the expansion could be completed within the deadline. On the second night, I stayed with 2 other security guards. If the construction team had any questions, they could come to us directly. After midnight, I couldn't take it anymore, so I found a corner to take a nap. The night was quite peaceful, and there were no problems. The construction was in its final stage. After staying in the underground morgue for so long, I slept in my bedroom for the whole day. On the last night, I called the 2 security guards to go with me to the underground morgue. The first half of the night was peaceful, and after that, I thought there wouldn't be anything, so I found a room that would not attract attention and used a few broken cement bags to take a nap. Perhaps I was too nervous during that period, so I fell asleep very quickly.
When I opened my eyes, I realized that the underground morgue had become much darker. The lights that the construction team brought had all been switched off, and only the old-fashioned lights were left on.
I lay in the corner and raised my head to look. People were moving in and out of the corridor, and the construction team seemed to be busy. I had just woken up, and my mind was still fuzzy. I took out my phone to check the time.
Before I could see the time on the screen, I suddenly heard footsteps, and someone was walking in.
They were working outside, and I was slacking in the room. I didn't want to be seen, so I didn't say anything. The man came in and walked around before leaving. I glanced at my phone. It was 3:40 a.m., and there were several unread messages and missed calls on the screen. Lying on the cement bag, I clicked open the message and realized that it was from the other 2 security guards. They asked me where I was. Before the smoke in the room cleared, John Lee took out another cigarette, lit it, and took a few deep puffs. At the time, I really didn't think too much about it. I replied, "I'm still in the morgue." "Where are you guys? Did you sneak back to your bedroom?" I was new, and I wanted to build a good relationship with them. I even replied jokingly, "You guys are so mean, you didn't even call me when you left." 10 seconds later, the person replied, telling me to come out as soon as possible. Many people were looking for me. I was confused. The construction team was still working outside, and these two had snuck away. Now they said that many people were looking for me. Just as I was about to send them a message, the person called me. After I picked it up, I realized that things were different from what I had imagined. The first thing that came out of his mouth was, "The expansion has been completed, and the construction team has retreated. What are you doing in the morgue alone?"
Zhang Li bit the cigarette in his mouth, and his hands gripped his knees tightly. When I heard that, I purposely looked outside. There were people moving in and out of the corridor, and one of them seemed to have heard the commotion and walked directly toward my room. Our horror and suspense book has an average subscription of 50,000 copies. In the past, this was a result that would scare me to death even in my dreams.
However, with this result came other things. A few days ago, the editor informed me that the introduction needed to be changed to a more positive one. Although my original introduction didn't seem to have much to do with the main text, and I've been unhappy with it for a long time, I was still a little reluctant to change it. I rewrote 5 more introductions, but I felt like something was missing. Before I could confirm this, the editor informed me that the title might be changed as well. Suddenly, a lot of things that I had never thought of came rushing at me. It was quite tiring. However, on second thought, this also proved that our niche book had really become popular. Actually, readers should be able to tell that ever since the 1st of December, when the monthly ticket sales made its way into the top 10, the tone of Haunted House has become much warmer. The stories of Xiao Xiao and her grandfather, Dr. Gao and his wife, and the phone spirit, every one of them is actually kind. This isn't a compromise, but it's just bringing forward the things that I originally wanted to express. My parents and friends are also following this book. My words are written with a clear conscience, so I'm not afraid of the wind whistling in my ears or the mud under my feet. Good night, sweet dreams. I have a haunted house, thanks to Huan Yu's 3rd silver mo, while chatting about $5. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. The construction team had already retreated. Who was the person walking in the corridor? I hung up the phone and used the cement bag to cover my body. Only my eyes were exposed. The footsteps got closer, and I narrowed my eyes to look. The light was dim, and a blurry shadow walked to my side. The way he moved was strange, and his body was uncoordinated. I held my breath and did not dare move. The person walked around the room and prepared to leave. I lifted the corner of the cement bag, and I saw something that I will never forget. Zhang Li's lips were purple, and he revealed the nightmare that had haunted him for years. The person's face was empty, and it had been dug out clean.
The cigarette fell to the sofa, and Zhang Li's arms could not stop shaking. A long time ago, the cadavers used for medical dissection were not donated bodies. Most of them were death row inmates. After they were shot, their heads would become like that.
At this point, he could not continue. This time, Chen Ge really did not dare force him. Take a break and drink some water. No need. Even after so many years, Zhang Li was still afraid when he thought about it. He finished the cigarette in just a few puffs. When I saw the death row inmate, I realized what the problem was. The person who entered the room and the group of people in the corridor outside, they should all be cadavers for autopsy. The situation that Zhang Li described was indeed scarier than moving cadavers. At the time, there was a carnival going on in the underground corridor, and Zhang Li was the only living person. After spending a night in that kind of place until dawn, it was no wonder his personality had changed. I really saw it. This has been weighing on my heart, and I did not dare tell anyone, including my sister. Zhang Li's brows were creased together, and his expression was pained. A few years ago, after the girl who argued with my sister disappeared, my sister suspected that the girl had run into the underground morgue. She planned to enter the morgue to look for her, but I stopped her with my life. That place is really not for a living person. After voicing his thoughts, Zhang Li seemed to feel better. He touched the pack of cigarettes and realized that he had finished all of them. Don't smoke so much. Smoking is bad for your health. Chen Ge sat on the chair and recorded everything Zhang Li said on his phone. It doesn't matter. Ever since that night, I don't care about these things anymore. Zhang Li crumpled the pack of cigarettes into a ball. Without a cigarette to smoke, he felt uneasy, and it was difficult for him to calm down. Do you think I'm crazy? Was everything I saw that night an illusion? Chen Ge shook his head. He knew how dangerous the underground morgue was. The black phone had told him that there was a group of immortals living there. Actually, I sometimes wonder if what I saw that night was an illusion. Do you still remember how you escaped? According to Zhang Li, the number of corpses should have reached a ridiculous level. At that time, I was hiding under the cement bag. My body seemed to be frozen and I didn't dare to move. It wasn't until 5 o'clock in the morning that the people in the tunnel began to move deeper into the tunnel. During this process, didn't you send any messages asking for help? Chen Ge put down his phone. He was curious about the school's reaction. When I woke up, I already talked to the security guard. I told him that I was in the underground morgue, but they didn't send anyone to save me. I had no idea what had happened. From Zhang Li's tone, he was feeling very uncomfortable. Then did you notice anything strange when you came out, like there was a large amount of formalin in the tunnel or scratch marks on the walls? I waited until 8 a.m., and when there was no movement outside, I crawled up from the ground. At the time, my whole body was sore, and there were many bruises on my body. I was so afraid that I didn't pay attention to anything else. That was the end of Zhang Li's story. From then on, he treated the underground morgue as a forbidden zone, and his temper worsened. I advise you not to go to the underground morgue. If you really want to go there, you'd better call some people and go in during the day. Zhang Li told Chen Ge some other stories that he had heard from other places. The corridor that connects the morgue to the lab is often not locked, and even if it is, it will be opened. During the last expansion, the school added 7 morgues, but when people went to retrieve the cadavers, they would randomly see the 8th morgue. The morgue was close to the original location of the underground morgue, and it did not have a number. The road to the deeper part of the morgue has been blocked several times, but no matter how hard they tried, there would be problems. I remember one time, the school blocked the corridor with bricks, but after 1 or 2 weeks, the wall suddenly collapsed. When the staff went to investigate, they realized that every brick was covered in a thick stench of formalin. There are many similar things. The relocation of Western Zhejiang Medical University is also related to the underground morgue. I heard that Western Zhejiang Medical University will be moving to a new campus by next year. Then, this old campus will be abandoned and used for other purposes. Chen Ge did not expect that the medical school would have to move as well. He felt like things were getting serious. The information you provided is very useful to me. I will report this to the other officers. Other than that, you'd better give me the map of the underground morgue tomorrow. Chen Ge left some instructions and prepared to leave. When he stood up to walk to the door, he was suddenly reminded of something. Zhang Li, why do you insist on staying at Hai Ming Apartments? I heard something happened here before, and it seems to have happened right below you. A madman committed suicide downstairs. I know that. I'm an old tenant here. Zhang Li's expression was normal, like it was just a coincidence that he was staying there. Then, do you know that there was a student called Meng Nan who used to stay here? Chen Ge stopped moving and asked casually. Yes, the kid was greedy, so he stayed next to the room where the person died. That room is not meant for people to stay in. There was a doctor who stayed there before, but he only stayed for 1 night before moving away. How do you know he's a doctor? Chen Ge carried his backpack and was confused. Doctors don't run around outside the hospital in their white coats. Furthermore, he just moved in. With your personality, you wouldn't go and talk to him. I've seen him at school. The doctor's surname is Gao, and he comes from a rich family. At the time, I was curious why he moved to this place. Zhang Li could not understand it. When I went downstairs to buy cigarettes that night, I saw Dr. Gao standing in the corridor. I had no idea what he was doing. Before Meng Nan moved in, Dr. Gao stayed in that room for 1 night? Yes, don't you think that's weird? He has several apartments in Zhejiang, so why would he stay in this cheap apartment? Zhang Li's words alerted Chen Ge. It was Dr. Gao who first noticed that something was wrong with Meng Nan, and it was Dr. Gao who took care of Meng Nan. This was probably a trap set up by Dr. Gao himself. The reason Meng Nan had moved into such a secluded apartment was because he had seen a message on the school's forum. Now that he thought about it, the message was very suspicious. The people from Hai Ming Apartments wouldn't purposely go to the school's forum to post a message, so the message was probably posted by Dr. Gao. Chen Ge walked out of the room and came to the 3rd floor. But why would Dr. Gao do that? What does he want from Meng Nan's second persona? After giving it some thought, Chen Ge felt that the only thing that could attract Dr. Gao's attention about Meng Nan's second persona was the connection between him and the main persona. With the power of the Society of Strange Tales, they could have killed Meng Nan's main persona, but they did not do that. They merely put Meng Nan's main persona into hibernation. Could it be that Dr. Gao is studying how to control the door pusher? Chen Ge replayed the conversation between Dr. Gao and Meng Nan. If Dr. Gao is number 10 of the Society of Strange Tales, does Meng Nan's main persona know about this? Chen Ge wanted to complete the trial mission at the underground morgue on his own. If he could drag Meng Nan down with him, it would be great. After all, Meng Nan's main persona was also a red specter. Whether Dr. Gao is the chairperson of the Society of Strange Tales or not, I can use this to convince Meng Nan. He probably doesn't want his second persona to fall into the hands of his mortal enemy. After making up his mind, Chen Ge planned to return to the third sick hall that night. Zhang Li, you have to give me the map of the underground morgue as soon as possible. It's very important. Chen Ge was about to leave when his phone suddenly rang. He looked down to see it was a call from Li Zheng. Do you need me to leave? Zhang Li asked. There's no need. Chen Ge answered the call before Zhang Li. Inspector Li, how can I help you? Inspector Li, how can I help you? In my years as a police officer, Dr. Gao is the most cautious and cunning person I've met. He should have noticed our plan already. 2 hours ago, he left Zhujiang. He left? Are you sure? Dr. Gao leaving Zhujiang was a good thing for Chen Ge. This way, he would have one less variable when he went to complete the trial mission at the underground morgue. How come I hear excitement in your voice? Li Zheng was quite annoyed. Dr. Gao's sudden departure was like he had clenched his fists and gathered his strength, but he had punched nothing. His sudden departure means that he has something to hide. Looks like he's afraid. Even though that was what Chen Ge said, his real plan was to use this opportunity to enter the underground morgue to complete the mission. You don't understand the situation at all. Following our investigation over the past few days, we've discovered more and more problems with Dr. Gao. Li Zheng lowered his voice. There's no one around you, right? What's wrong? Based on our investigation, Dr. Gao might be related to several murder cases. He might not be a direct participant, but he is somehow involved in all of them. A few? Chen Ge clung to the last shred of hope. Is it possible that he was framed? With his intelligence, I feel like the only person in Zhujiang who could harm him is himself. There was helplessness in Li Zheng's voice. I can't deny that he's a good doctor, but at the same time, he's also a madman who hides his true nature. There are some things that I can't reveal to you. I'm calling you today to inform you that we'll be meeting Gao Rushui tomorrow night. Other than that, I'll send you some information. You'd better take a look. Okay, no problem. Chen Ge hung up and left after giving Zhang Li some instructions. Dr. Gao has left Zhujiang. This is a golden opportunity for me. After I get the blueprint tomorrow, I'll start the mission. For this mission, Chen Ge had been preparing for a long time, but he was still worried. Compared to the thrilling missions with a slim chance of survival, Chen Ge preferred the easy way to win. Looks like I'll need a few more helpers. The door to the third sick hall would only open at midnight, so Chen Ge did not rush there. He called a taxi to Zhujiang's children's home. After getting out of the car, the guard was very excited when he saw Chen Ge. He stood up and prepared to lock the door. Sir. Chen Ge ran over and forced his way in. Are Zhang Ling and Fan Yu around? I have something important to tell them. They were sent here yesterday, and the 2 children are tired. Please let them in us rest for a while. Nothing had happened at the children's home before, but ever since they called Chen Ge, first the children had gone missing, and then the only doctor had disappeared. They were under a lot of pressure. It won't take up too much time. Chen Ge walked in. The children's home was the same as before. There were flower pots on the side of the road, and there were various cartoons on the walls. The guard could not stop Chen Ge, so he called the nurse that Chen Ge had met earlier. The nurse had a good impression of Chen Ge. She told the guard, it was him who found Fan Yu and Zhang Ling in the mountains. Without him, our children's home would be in the media's crosshairs. With the nurse leading the way, Chen Ge arrived at the room where Fan Yu and Zhang Ling were staying. He pushed the door open, and the room was warm. There was a lamp in the bedroom, and Fan Yu was drawing at the table. Zhang Ling was leaning against the table on her tiptoes, watching. Fan Yu. Look who's here to see you. The nurse yelled into the room. If it was any other child, they would have run out to greet her, but the awkward thing was, Fan Yu and Zhang Ling ignored her. The nurse smiled awkwardly at Chen Ge. She wanted to say something else, but Chen Ge stopped her. Let's go take a look. Entering the room, the warm light fell on Chen Ge. Everything here was warm and comfortable until he saw the painting on the table. On the white paper, a small black person walked in front, and behind him were various red shadows. Fan Yu's painting completely ruined the warm atmosphere. After finishing the last stroke, he lifted his head to look at Chen Ge. You're here. Yes. Chen Ge had never treated Fan Yu as a normal child. He squatted down beside Fan Yu and glanced at Fan Yu's wrist. Fan Yu, how about we discuss something? Can I borrow the bracelet on your wrist for one night? No problem, but this bracelet only works when I'm wearing it. Fan Yu removed the jade bangle that the female ghost from Coffin Village had given him. After the bangle left his wrist, the blood vessels on it disappeared, and it looked like a normal bangle. When he put it on again, the scarlet blood vessels reappeared. If you need my help, you can bring me with you. Then never mind. Chen Ge did not want Fan Yu to be in danger, and he did not want to be distracted by Fan Yu. He scratched his chin and moved his gaze back to Zhang Ling. The ghost from Coffin Village had left Zhang Ling's body. She was just a normal child now, and when Chen Ge looked at her like that, she almost cried. The girl hid behind Fan Yu, and this put the two adults in a difficult position. Chen Ge did not know what to say, and the nurse felt like she had been completely ignored. With a light cough, Chen Ge had the nurse leave and tried to make a kind expression. Zhang Ling, I'm going to do something big tomorrow night. Can I borrow your big sister? Chen Ge tried to be as gentle as he could, but when Zhang Ling heard that, she still cried. Am I that scary? Chen Ge had no idea how to deal with children. He felt like people like Fan Yu and the phone spirit were easier to deal with. Zhang Ling cried louder and louder. In the end, Fan Yu whispered something into Zhang Ling's ear, and the girl slowly stopped crying. Her teary eyes stared at Chen Ge. Does that mean she agrees? What did you say to her? I said that you're her big sister's friend and that you're a good person who can make her big sister happy. You're right. Chen Ge nodded. He felt like Fan Yu was learning from him. The child was improving fast. Zhang Ling ran out with her short legs and grabbed a plastic bottle from behind the sofa. She reluctantly handed it to Chen Ge. Don't worry, I'm just asking her to support me. I won't let anything happen to her. Chen Ge accepted the plastic bottle. There was a small spider inside. Is your sister in there? Zhang Ling nodded pitifully. She felt like she had been tricked. With his goal achieved, Chen Ge did not stay there any longer. He left Zhujiang's children's home and ran to the third sick hall. He waited bitterly until midnight and slipped in when the blood door appeared. When Chen Ge appeared next to the old director again, the lonely head was about to cry. This was because he realized that the baleful ghost following Chen Ge had changed. Chen Ge did not waste any time with Amos. He went straight to Meng Nan and exaggerated the urgency of the matter by 10 times, adding oil to the fire. After hearing this, Meng Nan became conflicted. After leaving the blood door, his power would drop a lot, and for him, the threat that Chen Ge gave him was no less than Dr. Gao. Meng Nan was worried that he would fall into the tiger's den after escaping from the wolf's den. Let me think about it. At 1 a.m., Chen Ge left the third sick hall. He turned back to look. If everything went smoothly, this would be the last time he visited this place. After returning to New Century Park, Chen Ge organized all the information about the underground morgue before he went to bed. Be careful of the red corridors. Be absolutely quiet when you enter them. There are only 7 morgues around the outside of the morgue. Do not enter the 8th morgue. After memorizing all the information, he lay in bed and went to sleep. The theme park opened at 9 a.m. Almost at the same time, Zhang Li sent the map of the underground morgue to Chen Ge's phone. There were more than 10 pictures and 2 one-minute videos. Does this guy really think I'm a police informant? Since Dr. Gao was not in Zhujiang, Chen Ge decided to activate the underground morgue mission that night. After he sent the visitors into the scenario, he hid to the side and looked through the pictures. The underground morgue at Zhujiang Medical University was large, and it had been expanded 3 times. The date and blueprint for the first expansion were missing. The second expansion was due to the merger of 2 medical schools in Zhujiang, and the third expansion was the one that Zhang Li had participated in. It covers the entire western campus. Isn't this a bit too big? The underground morgue could be roughly split into 3 areas. The outer area was filled with various transport corridors, 2 storerooms, and 5 morgues. The middle area was an abandoned cadaver pool. It had been sealed many years ago. According to Zhang Li, there was a central hub in the underground morgue, and it was written in the information. However, no one had been able to find the way in. Zhang Li had even made it very clear in the picture that he suspected something had happened to the central hub to seal it up. Chen Ge looked through all the pictures and videos. There was only a map of the outer area. The map of the middle area seemed to have been erased. The biggest secret of the underground morgue should be hidden in the central area. I need to find the way to the central area from the middle area. He memorized the map in the pictures and studied it for the whole morning. After confirming that it was correct, he put the phone away. In the afternoon, Chen Ge got back to work and worked until 6:30 p.m. After Xu Wan and Ji Yufeiyu left, Chen Ge locked himself in the staff break room. He took a few deep breaths. After inspecting all his items, he took out the black phone. The underground morgue is the 8th side mission of the 4-star scenario, School of the Afterlife. After completing it, I'll have the right to activate the 4-star scenario. Sitting at the table, Chen Ge's finger moved across the screen and clicked on the mission. Do you want to accept the 8th side mission of School of the Afterlife? Yes. Side Mission 8. Immortality. In the undisclosed area of the underground morgue, there is a group of immortals living there. Mission Venue. Western Zhujiang Medical University. Mission Hint. The meaning of life does not lie in whether one can breathe or not but something else. Mission Requirement. Enter the central area of Zhujiang Medical University's underground morgue before midnight, survive until dawn. After reading the message on the black phone, Chen Ge did not look so good. To enter the central area before midnight, looks like I'll have to move as soon as possible. Chen Ge's eyes focused on the last few words of the mission requirement. This kind of mission that requires survival until dawn is usually very difficult. Thankfully, I've come prepared. Picking up the backpack, Chen Ge exited the staff break room. Similar to his previous trip to Coffin Village, he planned to bring all the employees at the haunted house with him. Even if they don't have much combat ability, they should be able to hold the fort. Pen Spirit, Xiao Xiao, Shu Yin, Dr. Skullcracker's hammer. Chen Ge shoved everything he could think of into the backpack and picked up the white cat when it was not paying attention. Did I miss something? Right, there's a statue in the underground scenario. The statue used to be related to the Society of Strange Tales, but now it was Chen Ge's ghost. Rushing into the underground scenario, Chen Ge pushed open the door to his wife's room. The ugly statue stood next to the bed, and its eyes stared blankly at a spot in the room. No one knew what it had been through. How did old Joe and the others persuade it? How come it looks so tired? Chen Ge walked to the statue and took out Yan Danian's comic. I found the real killer. As long as you're willing to become my employee, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will help you take revenge. The statue did not understand what Chen Ge said, but it could be felt that its body shivered like its emotions had changed. Your killer is hiding in the deepest part of the underground morgue. It is very dangerous there. If you are willing to join my haunted house, I will bring all of my employees to seek justice for you. Chen Ge was armed to the teeth, and his tone was firm. It was clear that he was not joking. He really planned to go there. The statue felt like something was wrong, but after it used its power, it realized that what Chen Ge said was true. He was not lying to it. I will take revenge for you. Tonight, I will go to the underground morgue and capture the real killer. The statue's ugly face looked at Chen Ge, and tears of blood leaked out from its eyes. Chen Ge was telling the truth. He really planned to bring all of his employees to the underground morgue that night. Come with me. You are more familiar with the place. If you can help me, Things will be much easier tonight. The statue was afraid. Actually, it did not want to return to the underground morgue. It was hard for outsiders to imagine how scary that place was, but it could not reject Chen Ge's offer. In order to help it fulfill its wish, the man in front of it was willing to put himself in danger and go to such a terrifying place. This made its cold heart surge with a trace of warmth. Chen Ge saw that he had laid the groundwork, so he flipped open Yan Danian's comic. Come on in. When we arrive, I have many questions to ask you. The statue had stayed in the underground morgue for years, so it was very familiar with the place. This was one of the reasons why Chen Ge insisted on bringing the statue with him. The blood in the eyes stopped flowing, and the ugly face of the statue slowly changed shape. The face that symbolized truth gradually softened, and finally, a girl who was more than 1.7 meters tall appeared in front of the statue. The girl looked very similar to Ma Ying. She was very quiet and seemed to be inherited from her family. They were both very tall. After the girl left the statue, she went straight into Yan Danian's comic, and a female statue appeared on the blank page. This sculpture was filled with sorrow, pain, betrayal, and despair. The statue ghost is also willing to help. The probability of completing the mission tonight has increased a lot. Chen Ge left wife's room and entered Muyang High School. He added the boy with the foul odor and the hanging man into the comic. When the completion rate of the third sick hall's trial mission passed 90%, I was rewarded with a mental patient's patient list. Each patient list has the soul of a mental patient. Should I bring them with me? Those mental patients were originally members of the Society of Strange Tales, and they were still controlled by madness after they died. Normally, Chen Ge did not dare use them. I'll bring them with me. After all, they're one of my trump cards. Chen Ge thought about it and shoved the patient list into his backpack. When the chairperson of the Society of Strange Tales sees all his members standing with me, he'll probably vomit blood from anger. Chen Ge also felt like he had crossed the line. He had not only inherited the entire legacy of the society, but he had also recruited the former members. The Society of Strange Tales has been too crazy in the past. If I become the chairperson, I'll definitely change all that. I'll make them repent and receive true salvation. Carrying the backpack and the hammer, Chen Ge had just exited the haunted house. Before he could close the door, Li Zheng's call came. After Dr. Gao disappeared, Gao Ru Shui's emotions have been unstable. She seems to know something. I need you to go talk to Gao Ru Shui immediately and try to get some information out of her. Brother Zheng, I have something else to do tonight, so I'm afraid I won't be able to stay for long. How about you try to get someone else to talk to Gao Ru Shui? It can only be you, Li Zheng said firmly. Li Zheng said decisively, on the day she was targeted by the murderer of the eye-gouging case, we looked through her mobile phone. She had been calling you the whole day. I don't know what the relationship between you two is, but I know it's definitely not an ordinary one. Chen Ge, I hope you can stick to your principles in the face of danger. When he heard that, Chen Ge realized that Li Zheng and the rest had probably misunderstood. That day, Gao Ru Shui's phone had been taken over by the phone spirit. She had been able to get through to everyone but him. Gao Ru Shui had been calling him out of curiosity and anxiety. Okay, I'll go now. From Li Zheng, Chen Ge found out that Gao Ru Shui was living alone at Dr. Gao's clinic. She did not dare return to her roommates and did not want to return to Shi Hu. He hailed a cab to get to Dr. Gao's clinic. When Chen Ge got out of the car, he realized that the clinic was very close to Western Zhejiang Medical University. There was a plainclothes officer who was watching Gao Ru Shui 24 hours a day. When Chen Ge got out of the car, he recognized him. The officer was surprised by Chen Ge's appearance, and his eyes lingered on the white cat in Chen Ge's arms for a long time. In the end, he decided to obey his superior's order and actively approach Chen Ge. The officer told Chen Ge about Gao Ru Shui's situation and then gave him a recording pen before leaving. He knocked lightly on the door, and after a long time, Gao Ru Shui finally opened it. She did not seem to have rested well the night before. She looked very tired and lethargic. Chen Ge, why are you here? I heard that you've been very sad lately, so I'm worried about you. Chen Ge was carrying a heavy backpack, and his tone was rather stiff. To avoid awkwardness, he picked up the white cat with both hands. Do you like cats? The white cat turned to look at Chen Ge with a confused expression on its small furry head and its heterochromatic eyes. The cat's cute expression improved Gao Rushui's mood. She reached out to pat the white cat's head and moved aside. "I'm fine. Come in, do you want something to drink?" Gao Rushui had been alone for too long, and she wanted to talk to someone, but she did not know who to go to. "It's okay." Chen Ge followed Gao Rushui into Dr. Gao's office. The room was mostly filled with books. There were all kinds of books, and most of them were out of print. "Does Dr. Gao like to read that much?" "Yes, he doesn't have many hobbies. Other than reading, he likes to collect strange art." Gao Rushui made 2 cups of coffee and brought them over. Chen Ge accepted the coffee and took a sip. After rambling for a long time, he pretended to ask casually, "Speaking of which, we've known each other for a long time, but I don't think I've heard you call Dr. Gao, father, before. It feels like the two of you are a bit distant." Gao Rushui had a cold personality, and she did not purposely target anyone. Perhaps it was because of certain experiences that made her like this. The things that she had experienced were the things that Chen Ge wanted to find out the most during his visit. After hearing what Chen Ge said, Gao Rushui did not speak immediately. She looked at the coffee in the cup, and after a long time, she finally revealed a secret that had been suppressed in her heart for a long time. A few years ago, there was an accident during treatment for a patient, and his condition suddenly worsened. I don't know if it was because of the medicine or my father's treatment method. In the middle of the treatment, the patient lost his mind and jumped off the balcony. At the time, my father did not have his own clinic. He treated patients at home, and we lived on the 8th floor. When a patient jumped off a building, the patient's family definitely did not want it. We tried to explain, compensate, and move, but nothing worked. My father was under a lot of pressure at that time, but thankfully, he had my mother's support. I thought it was just a hurdle for my family, and everything would be fine once we crossed it, but who knew the impact of this incident would only get bigger and bigger. The patient's family ran to the hospital to demand justice. My father was trapped in his office, and his condition continued to worsen. My mother was worried about my father, so she called a taxi to rush to the hospital, but she got into a car accident on the way. No one answered the phone. My father then met my mother at the hospital, but Gao Rushui held the cup with both hands, and her voice was very low. She was like an abandoned doll covered in scars. The resuscitation was ineffective, and my mother eventually left us. During that time, my father kept himself in his room, like he had completely shut himself away. He did not want to communicate with the outside world. Sometimes, when I passed by his room in the middle of the night, I could hear him calling my mother's name softly. From that moment on, my father seemed to have changed into a different person. He started to do strange things. He would go out at midnight, and his body would smell of blood and formalin. Just as my mother was about to be buried, he did something even more shocking. He stole my mother's body. Only I know about that. I once asked him about it, but it was like he had changed into a different person. I will never forget the look in his eyes. Despair, sadness, and a madness that burned away everything. My mother's body disappeared. About a month later, my father returned to normal. His eyes were deep like an endless ocean, and all the negative emotions disappeared. He became more mature than before, like nothing in the world could stop him. Other people thought that he had walked out from his sadness and regained the hope of life, but only I knew that he had buried the deepest pain in his heart. The calmer he appeared on the surface, the more tormented his heart was. From then on, my father rarely appeared at night. He worked in the day and would go out alone at night. It was from then on that I felt like I had changed into a different person.
Gao Rushui had kept these words in her heart for a long time, and this was the first time she had shared them with someone else. Chen Ge had saved her life at the most crucial moment, pulling her back from the brink of death, so she was very grateful and trusted Chen Ge.
He worked in the day and went out at night, but he was so energetic every day. Chen Ge felt like Dr. Gao's situation was similar to his own. He believed that Dr. Gao had also been influenced by the specter, and that was why he had become like that. Gao Rushui finished her story. She was tired, and she curled up on the sofa. Chen Ge did not disturb Gao Rushui. The girl before him did not seem to realize that her father had disappeared. Like usual, she spent the night alone. After all, her father would not return. Looking at the time, Chen Ge found a blanket from the room next door to cover Gao Rushui. Then, he carried the white cat and left quietly. When the door closed, Gao Rushui, who had fallen asleep, slowly opened her eyes. She touched the blanket on her body and looked at the closed door.
After leaving the clinic, Chen Ge walked to Western Zhejiang Medical University. He needed to enter the underground morgue before midnight.
On the way, Chen Ge called Li Zheng to report Dr. Gao's situation. Then, he ignored everything else and prepared to focus on completing the trial mission. The underground morgue was different from the 3-star scenarios that he had encountered earlier. It was well preserved, and its power had not been weakened, so Chen Ge did not dare let his guard down. He did not enter Western Zhejiang Medical University from the front door but took a detour to the western gate. According to Zhang Li's map, the real entrance to the underground morgue was at the western campus. Compared to the other gates, this place was very quiet. There was not even a peddler around. Chen Ge looked around. After ensuring that no one was looking, he jumped into the school while avoiding the cameras. It's 9 p.m. now. I still have 3 hours. Even though the western campus had streetlights on, compared to the other campuses, it was much less lively. Chen Ge walked through the bushes by the side of the road and stuck close to the wall. Recalling the map in his mind, he slowly approached the entrance to the underground morgue. The western campus was the largest of the few campuses. There were 2 laboratory buildings and several buildings with unknown functions. However, most of the buildings were sealed and inaccessible. Moving forward, there seemed to be 3 security guards patrolling the area. They were very far away from Chen Ge, so even with yin-yang vision, Chen Ge could only make out their silhouettes. Why are the 3 security guards standing there? According to the map, there were 5 entrances to the underground morgue, and the 3 security guards were guarding the front entrance. This was the path that Zhang Li's group had taken to expand the morgue. Of the remaining 4 passageways, 2 led to the 2 laboratory buildings, 1 led to the abandoned school building, and the last was an emergency passageway. This emergency passageway led to the outside of the school to prevent any danger from happening underground. The security guards blocked the way to the front entrance, so Chen Ge had to use another path. He walked around to the lab on the left. Pushing open the window, Chen Ge jumped into the room. He did not walk for long when he saw a glass container placed on the shelf. There was something that looked like a human head soaking in it. I think I've heard Lu Shenxian mention this before. When she was following Lu Jie, she saw Lu Jie talking to the human head inside the glass container. Lu Shenxian had seen Lu Jie enter this room before, and at the time, the man had been talking to the human head inside the glass jar. This is very suspicious. Chen Ge turned on the flashlight on his phone, and the light shone on the glass jar. Even after so many years, the human head inside the jar was still as vivid as ever. This thing is quite scary to see in the lab at night. Chen Ge stared at the glass jar for a while. The human head inside appeared to be frozen in some kind of gel, and it did not move. It did not blink or float, which was different from what Lu Shenxian had said. For the sake of safety, Chen Ge summoned Lao Zhou and the rest to inspect the jar, but they did not find anything out of place. The thing that's attached to it has probably left. Chen Ge looked at the glass jars with contemplation. Lu Jie was able to communicate with the human head inside the glass jars. Did that mean that there was something at the western campus that could attach itself to these specimens and communicate information through the things inside these jars? If that was the case, things were not looking good. The whole western campus was under the enemy's surveillance, and there were so many organ specimens in the lab and underground morgue. Perhaps the thing was hiding inside one of the jars, watching him silently. I'll have to try my best to avoid these things. Chen Ge placed the white cat on his backpack and walked out of the room. Outside the room was a corridor about 10 meters long. The doors on both sides were all locked, and a few of them had yellowish-brown seals on them. Looking through the window on the door, he saw rows of cold test benches in the room. Narrowing his eyes, Chen Ge used yin-yang vision and noticed that there was something that looked like water stains on the table at the front. It felt like someone had just laid on the table. The corridor isn't here. If not for the fact that he had a mission and was pressed for time, Chen Ge would have visited every room. The lab building is a good scenario. The atmosphere here is not bad. I should build something similar in the future. Director Luo had demolished the surrounding buildings to prepare for the expansion of Chen Ge's haunted house. To create a horror theme park, an underground scenario was not enough. At the end of the corridor, Chen Ge noticed that the door of one of the autopsy rooms was not locked. The door was half open, and the seal on it had been removed. There's no dust on the doorknob, so someone has been in here for the past few days. Chen Ge squatted down, and there were scratches on the ground. Holding the doorknob, Chen Ge tried to push the door. The door was slightly deformed, and when he pushed, he had to use the handle to avoid the scratches. Looks like the person was in a hurry when he came in, and he missed these details. Looks like the person was in a hurry when he first came in. Chen Ge stood at the door and did not hurry to enter. He knew that whenever he smelled this scent, it meant that those things had been here before. Placing the white cat on the table, Chen Ge rubbed its head. Can you tell where this smell is coming from? The multicolored eyes reflected Chen Ge. After a while, the cat suddenly jumped down from the table and crawled into a cubicle at the back of the autopsy room. The multicolored eyes reflected Chen Ge's figure. After a while, the white cat suddenly jumped down from the table and crawled into a cubicle at the back of the autopsy room. Found it? There was a wooden door in the cubicle, and the white cat was standing before it, meowing non-stop. The smell of formalin came from behind the door. Chen Ge pushed the door several times and realized that it was locked. Move aside. Chen Ge raised the hammer, and the white cat jumped to the side. Bang! The scary-looking hammer smashed down on the lock, and the lock fell to the ground. Chen Ge was quite experienced in smashing doors. He focused his strength on the lock, and compared to other methods, it would be much quieter. Behind the wooden door was a dark corridor. According to the map provided by Zhang Li, this was one of the corridors that led from the lab to the underground morgue. Following this corridor, he would reach the outer perimeter of the underground morgue. Placing the white cat in his backpack, Chen Ge used his phone as a flashlight. He glanced down the corridor, and his brows furrowed slightly. The stairs were covered in broken glass and some shapeless dirt, like someone had purposely dropped a specimen bottle at the door. The 3 security guards at the front door will probably come to check soon. I'd better leave this place first. Chen Ge did not want to waste time, but when he turned to close the door, his eyes were attracted by something else. The wooden door was covered in fingernail marks. They were so dense that they looked scary. Something is trying to come out. There were too many fingernail marks to count, so it was impossible to tell how many monsters there were in the morgue. Chen Ge took out his phone to snap a picture. He avoided the dirt on the stairs and continued to move down. Soon, he reached the first floor, and there was a split in the corridor. The corridor on the left was not painted, and the one on the right was painted white. When he got close, Chen Ge saw a few words written on the wall. They looked like worms crawling on them. The unpainted passage on the left read, "Sidewalk," and the white passage on the right read, "Corpse Path." The words are written 2 meters high, so the writer should be an adult, but aren't these words too ugly? It's like I've just learned how to hold a pen. Chen Ge took out his phone to look at the map. To get to the underground morgue, he had to take the white corridor. To complete the mission, Chen Ge had no choice but to crawl into the zombie path. Perhaps it was a psychological trick, but ever since he entered the corridor, Chen Ge kept feeling like there was someone walking down the corridor. He tried to pick up his pace, and the person before him did the same. He slowed down, and the person did the same. After walking for about half a minute, blood-red words began to appear on the white painted wall. You're going the wrong way. This is a corridor for dead bodies. I'm warning you, don't go any further. Why don't you listen to me? I know, you also want to turn into a dead body, right? Chen Ge did not care what the words were. He was curious about the placement of the words. Some of the words were written on the wall, and some were written on the ceiling. Chen Ge raised his head to study it for a long time, and he realized that if he wanted to write something like that, he would have to lie on the ceiling. Is this monster a lizard? He stopped, and so did the person before him. The corridor suddenly became quiet. Every 3-star scenario has its own unique monster. I wonder what the monsters in the underground morgue will look like. Chen Ge placed the white cat on the ground. He moved forward at a constant speed, and so did the person. From the sound, it's about 20 meters away. The person is on the other side of the corner. Could the person walking in front of me be the one who left these bloody words? Chen Ge decided to go and ask in person. He held the hammer and took out the recorder from his backpack. When he pressed the button, the person walking before him suddenly disappeared. Only Chen Ge's footsteps could be heard in the corridor. He turned the corner, and there was a sentence written on the white wall. "You will regret this." Is this a threat? Other than these ugly words, there was nothing else in the corridor. Chen Ge silently put the recorder away. Now is not the time to expose my trump card. The most important thing now is to enter the central hub of the underground morgue within the time limit. Chen Ge knew that for a 3-star scenario, the real danger would only be revealed after midnight. He walked down the white corridor for a few more minutes, and Chen Ge noticed more strange things. There were water stains on the white walls, and it was unclear where the liquid came from. If one looked closer, one would find human hair on the ground. Some were long, some were short. When he picked one up, he could smell the thick stench of formalin coming from the hair. The scent seemed to have seeped into his hair and fused with it. Other than that, the thing that confused Chen Ge the most was the bloody words on the wall. The person seemed to know that people would enter the underground morgue from this corridor, and they kept warning outsiders. These words were used by the monsters at the morgue to warn the people at the medical school? The school workers and students who needed to do experiments would use this corridor to go to the morgue to retrieve the dead bodies. The red words felt like they were written by dead bodies. There were warnings, threats, and a sense of helplessness. Every few steps he took, he could see a paragraph of text. The words were getting uglier and uglier, as if there was something wrong with the hand holding the pen. There were a few places where the strokes were broken halfway through, as if the pen had fallen from the hand. If the hand dropped halfway, that would be quite scary. Even now, Chen Ge had no idea what kind of monsters there were in the underground morgue. The mission that night had just begun, and there were still many places that he needed to explore. The corridors had a slope, and they led downward. When they reached the end, Chen Ge had already reached the second floor, which was the outermost part of the morgue. It's a little easier than I thought. He didn't know if it was because of Shu Yin's appearance, but the journey was very smooth. Chen Ge only found some clues and didn't encounter any substantial danger. At the end of the corpse transport tunnel, 2 more paths appeared. One of them wasn't painted, but it looked eerie and eerie. It was very quiet. There was another one that was still painted white. On the flat ground, one could see the marks left by the rolling wheels of a cart. This should be left behind by the staff when they transport the corpses. The morgue had a cart that was specially used to transport dead bodies. It looked light, and that tempted Chen Ge. The cart that Shu made is a bit clumsy. After the underground morgue is unlocked, I can use this cart to transport the fainted visitors. Having a baleful specter push a cart from the morgue out of a scary scenario was a unique experience in itself. Chen Ge took out his phone to look. According to the map, he was at the edge of the underground morgue, and the white corridor led to the outer part of the morgue. Entering this road, there were 3 small morgues about 8 meters away, a medium-sized morgue, and further down the road was an unknown area. Chen Ge looked at all the maps, but there was no record of that corridor. Taking out Dr. Skullcracker's hammer, Chen Ge walked to the first small morgue. The iron door was not locked, and there was no dust on it. This small morgue seemed to have been used recently. Should I open it to take a look? Chen Ge had planned everything before he came. He planned to clean up the place and not miss any corner. That way, when he returned, it would be much safer. In an enclosed environment like this underground, his biggest worry was being sandwiched when he tried to escape. Pulling open the iron door, the hinges creaked. There were 4 body freezers in the dark room. The freezers were still working, and the words "do not touch" were written on the door. The room was not big. Chen Ge walked around the room with the white cat, and the cat did not show any strange reaction. After exiting this morgue, Chen Ge entered a few other small morgues, and all of them were fine. The tire marks on the ground disappeared at the entrance of the medium-sized morgue. Looks like the people who come to collect the dead bodies from the school normally don't go deeper into the morgue. Stopping at the entrance of the medium-sized morgue, Chen Ge tried to pull the door, but it was not locked. There's a "no entry" sign on the door, but the door can be opened easily. Is this due to the manager's negligence, Or did someone open the door after the manager left? Chen Ge pulled the door open a gap and looked in. Other than the freezers, there were several steel tables placed in the corner. When his eyes swept the tables, the expression in Chen Ge's eyes changed slightly. The few tables were joined together, and there was something that looked like a human lying on them. The reason it looked like a human was because it only had the shape of a human, but the limbs and body were completely twisted. The white cat meowed softly, and Chen Ge carefully approached the wall. He walked past the row of freezers, and some of them appeared to be open. The temperature dropped, and he could feel the chill. Could these freezers be filled with dead bodies? Chen Ge moved away from the freezers subconsciously. He walked to the wall, and he saw a human mannequin that had been disassembled on the steel table. It was probably something that a medical student would use in class, and someone had dumped it there. The mannequin's stomach was cut open, and the various organs were arranged neatly to the side. If that was all, it would have been fine, but the mannequin's eyes were open, and they looked alive like the eyeballs of a real person had been embedded into the mannequin. There was a trace of desire in the beautiful eyes. He followed his gaze, and next to the mannequin's head, there was a rotten apple that gave off a light stench. The rotten apple formed a contrast with the mannequin's clean body. The person who set this up seemed to be trying to create an atmosphere. Chen Ge stood next to the mannequin and was about to take a closer look when a strange sound came from the corridor outside. It sounded like a pile of mud falling from a high place. Something's coming? Chen Ge did not have time to continue his investigation. He took out the hammer and hid at the door. He switched off the flashlight on his phone and used his yin-yang pupil to study the corridor that was painted white.